only Suzy Vadori. So, hey, Suzy, how is everything going?
Great. I'm really happy to be here. This should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, I think we should joke about this a little bit before we get to your current stuff. I've been working for you up until this week.
Yes, absolutely. Producing my podcast. Thank you.
Yes.
The stuff I don't want to do that you are amazing at. So why would I do it, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I just go and do the talking, and then you do all the producing and put it out there so that people can find it. Thank you.
So it was fun to do. It was a great experience. The final episode came out actually last week, ladies and gentlemen. It was inspired writing, which was a lot of fun to actually do. So,
we'll be doing more. Season 2 just wrapped. I haven't sent it all to my followers yet, so they'll be getting some of that this week. But it's done and out there. And then we'll have to do season 3 coming up in the late fall.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
You ready?
It's no, I all in all, it's for all the interesting little stuff here. I'm just doing something real quick before we
sure.
Before we get share blank. I'm just doing something for the audience here real quick because for this, folks, it's as they say, the latest episode, so people can go watch it if they want to go watch it, and that will be done. But you're past the show at this point, and now you're working on your own thing. You're doing like a boot camp course thing at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, so I've been doing so many things this year, Josh, and it's been like a really weird year for a lot of us. And for me, I've had to figure out how to take that one-on-one interaction that I do with writers all the time and move it online.
This is Jag. Hey, Jagtress. This is Suzy Vadori. Suzy, this is Jag. Jag's a writer. She's really good and she's hilarious.
Hello, welcome. Yeah. So this week, I just am running a retreat. Day 5 of our writers retreat is it's a virtual writers retreat, or it's actually a writers virtual retreat because we're not virtual writers, we're real writers. But a writers virtual retreat, and day 5 starts tomorrow, and then I'm going to open the doors to the fall registration for my boot camp, the Wicked Good Fiction Boot Camp, and it should be lots of fun. So the link to that, Josh, will be out tomorrow. But okay. I am doing a masterclass later this week, which is write your 5-star book, and it's totally free. So come and learn about writing with me. This one is really cool. It's one I've been thinking about for a while and just haven't had a chance to do. But basically, my philosophy on writing is a little bit different from lots of people, but I like to really get into the reader's head and teach people to write the way that your readers actually will read it, so that book that's in your head, it's kind of like a game of telephone. You ever play telephone when you were little?
Yeah.
You'd come up with a story, like whisper it to your buddy, and then they whisper it to the next person. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, absolutely. So it was actually a kindergarten assignment in school, actually, of all things, to prove this point. My teacher whispered something to the person, and it was originally Mickey Mouse built a house. By the time it got to me, it was just a buzz noise. Right? It was just something completely.
Or are you that guy? So everybody's played this game before, and sometimes you've got that guy, maybe it's Josh, at the end, who no matter, even if it came to him and said Mickey Mouse built a house, he might say something completely different, and it might involve, right?
It wasn't me. I was literally the third person in the group. The first 2 people said the same message, and then when it got to the third person, he changed the whole message.
Sure. Hey, but my point is, as writers, your job is to you come up with that story, and then the writing technique that you use to put it on the paper is like the telephone. Because what you want is, at the end of that telephone chain, you want your reader to actually see the same story that you were writing. And if you don't work on those pieces in between, then they won't. They'll see something totally different, and they won't see that vision that you had. And so when writers get frustrated that they're not getting great reader feedback, that's usually the reason. So the things that I like to teach are those particular moments and techniques to make sure that what you're writing actually is what ends up at the end of the telephone.
Which is very, 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 very important. I It's taken me a long time to figure that out on my end. Although, like, my style is unique in some ways, in some of the books I do. Yeah, it is very important. Yeah, it's super important. The thing about it takes a while because I think the other thing too is sometimes we get really caught in our heads like, hey, this is amazing. And then you write it down and then you read it and you're like, nope, this is poop.
Well, or you read it and you think it is still amazing because you know what you meant to write, and so your brain kind of fills in the details, and then your reader gets it and goes like, what? Right? So that's called the burden of knowledge. So a writer has something called the burden of knowledge, and that is that you already know what happens. So it's almost impossible to see in your own writing. You got to get other people involved and mimic your readers.
We all can kind of see when our writing's good. Like when we read it and we can feel it, it's like, bang, holy crap, this feels amazing. And I know it's amazing because I laughed at this terrible joke and I cried at this terrible moment. And so I know there's something there. It might not be perfect, but it's there. It's when you're like, I think I know what I'm doing. I think all of us are guilty of this on some level. Right. Yeah. Like, when you get to there, it's like this idea here and then what comes out here. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it does occasionally come out better. But for the most part, it's like, what did I do here? What happened between here and here? That when it's out there, it's like, right?
Yeah, and absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so and that's the creative dilemma, and something to work with writers all the time is basically that, and that's what the masterclass is all about. It's like, well, we like to say a lot of writers say that they write for themselves, right? And well, this is the way I wanted it, and the story is exactly what I wanted to write, and that's great. If you're just truly writing for yourself and journaling, and only you're going to read it, that's great. But at the end of the day, most of us want readers to actually get our stories, to actually enjoy and understand them. And love them and pass them on to their friends and tell everybody else about it and write reviews and all that stuff, right? So that's what it's about, is how do you get from writing it the way that you want it to writing it the way that your reader will actually understand exactly what's in your head. So yeah, that's what the masterclass is about.
That takes years usually to figure out how to do that well.
Yes, but is something that I have a lot of fun distilling into lessons that are actually quicker than years. So
hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you wanted the link to the masterclass, I can just type that in there for you, or I can just tell you.
Yeah. Well, just send me the private, and I'll send it up so people can actually do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I'm running a masterclass. The masterclass is free. It is on Thursday night. So it will be at 5 p.m. Pacific, which is
8 p.m. Eastern time.
Eastern. Yeah.
I've gotten really good with timelines doing this show. It's like, hey, what time zone was this work?
And during the pandemic, I now know that Saskatchewan and Phoenix don't change times.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and that I have one client in Croatia, and they actually do change times to daylight, but they do it several weeks before we do. So there's been times, when we think we have it all straight, and then all of a sudden we don't, and we miss each other, and our meetings are screwed up.
When I do international guests, sometimes it gets really, 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 really difficult. Sometimes to, oh shoot, almost.
What?
Yes, I did. I did miss a nest, Jag. I did miss a nest. This is why I love Twitch. Twitch has kind of got this live. This is why I love Twitch. I get harassed like all the time by different people, and it's kind of cool.
Oh, I can't see the comments. What was it?
Jag says I missed an S. She's actually saying that she is saying your class conflicts, your class conflicts with Critical Role, which is a very, very popular show. Like it's I think Jag Triss's crack of choice. If I'm not, is that accurate to say? Is it your drug of choice there, Jag? She'll answer that at some point, I'm sure. But it's okay. Yeah, we can go with that. We can go with that. It's like it's her drug of choice. It's like it's all good. I've met Jag when I did CanCon in Ottawa, so she's pretty cool. Her and her partner in crime, Jet Sword, are pretty rad people. So it's always neat to deal with them.
Writers are the best. Nice to meet you.
Yes. So. she's laughing at the reference there, but no, she's cool. Like the cool thing about this community Twitch, the reason why I focus on my time here is there's a good energy with a lot of. It's a different audience, and trying to get myself built up in this audience has always been a lot of fun. So that I had a comedian stop by one night. It was kind of fun. Jag actually was the guest. That was hilarious for like an hour. So, but all of which to say. So I guess what I'm going to ask for you then is, because again, it takes I think one of the hardest things for writers to do is, again, recognize when their stuff isn't good. What was like that point for you when you realized, like, sometimes that thing you write, right?
You think I ever wrote something that wasn't good? Of course I did. So those of you who, Josh, you've probably heard this story before, but I actually wrote my first full-length novel on maternity leave with my third child. And she's 10 now. And I drafted that and worked really hard at it. I thought it was really good. I'd come from business. I was a business executive. I knew grammar and punctuation and persuasive selling, writing, and all kinds of stuff, brought some skills. And I wrote a book and it wasn't very good. And so, I thought it was, but I sent it out and it got rejected and rejected and rejected, and I didn't get a lot of traction. So thankfully, lots of writers in the community actually helped me. And I hired a great editor. Then I ended up finding a terrific publisher that worked with me to get that first book finished. But yeah, I came into this industry, Josh, and from business, right? And then I was like, all right, I'm going to write a book. Where's the guidebook? Right? Funny, right? Naive Suzy. Where's the guidebook? And there really wasn't one. It was, people kind of give you snippets and bits, and you find something out from different editors and whatever else. So the whole concept of the boot camp was actually, I've been compiling a guidebook, right? So I've worked with, the best agents, editors, publishers, been super lucky. Even getting my book coaching certification, worked with Jenny Nash, amazing editor. I put together a guidebook, and that's what I share. So there's some like cold notes and shortcuts to help you skip the learning curve, because I think that's really important. And I was lucky that a lot of writers helped me, but I think sometimes we don't know why something works, right? Like what you said earlier, when you look at something and you're like, oh, it's good, but you don't necessarily know why, or you can't replicate it. And so those are the things I've been working on. My brain works that way to kind of put things into patterns. And so.
Well, we'll get to that second. First, Jag says Jenny Nash is amazing. She's attended a workshop of hers before. It was a free Writers Week event. So that's cool. That's someone I should probably try to get on the show at some point. That'd be kind of fun to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's where I have my book coaching certification. And I had to get, not to get political here because it might, no, just kidding. I had to get my third shot this week because I'm going to a conference in Santa Barbara for book coaches, and part of it is at Jenny's home. So
cool.
Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
I've been working with her online virtually for a while, and she actually has a lesson. So inside the boot camp that I teach, I use her inside outline, which is like the outline, the quick and dirty outline that pantsers can use, that everybody can use, because it doesn't take long and it's absolutely magic, and I love it. And she actually recorded a lesson with me in the course.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. And Jag says that is definitely awesome. How do I put this in a fun way? I think for me, like, reading aloud is definitely one of the ways to determine it very quickly, because again, there's you got yourself a new signee. Jag trusts to sign.
Oh, perfect. I'll see you there. Make sure you say hi when you're in there.
Yeah.
That'll be awesome.
It's her name. Trust me, you'll recognize Jag. It should be the same. It'll be kind of like the same humor. I promise that you're seeing here, pretty much. You will. I
can't see it though. I'm logged in.
I don't know why you can't. Like on Restream, on where we were gonna go, you would have seen the comments. I'm not quite sure how why that doesn't work here. I can only imagine. I only can imagine that. I have to pay for it on StreamYard. I don't know. It's the only thing I can think about. I don't know. I use StreamYard as kind of like a plan B. So, and Jag does talk a lot. She's hilarious.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
make sure you say hi. It'll be fun.
Yeah. No, Suzy's cool. You'll really love the chat with Suzy. I promise you. No, it's one of those things. Like, I think good writing, like, for a lot of us, takes a lot of time. Like, because for me, I know particularly, it was finding people that can tell you your stuff is crap. Because sometimes you can tell, but sometimes you really can't. It's just, I think we all have, like, those blind spots. I don't care how good you are, you're always going to have blind spots to your own writing. And I think a bit it comes with the fact that one of the other parts about writing is your voice. Yeah, your voice is unique. You don't want to mess with it too much, but you want to polish it and kind of refine it. So sometimes not everything you do is good, right? So, and that's
It's true.
Yeah.
It's not. And if you ask Josh, most people, the first thing that they do, especially if they've come from outside the industry, is they ask a friend or family member to read it. And what's that friend or family member going to say?
Nice.
It's great.
Yeah.
I loved it, right? And so one of the challenges I have as an editor or book coach is when somebody brings me something and I'm going to be honest and tell them, you know, what I'm seeing or what's not working, and I'll explain it. I'm never harsh. I always explain it. I love teaching, and I'll be like, hey, you do this quite often. Let's work on that. But yeah, and sometimes they come back and say, but I've already had 5 people read it and they loved it. So you're wrong, right? You're wrong. But they love you. They want to like your stuff. They love you. And they aren't trained editors. So they kind of have that rose-colored glasses on for your book. They want you to succeed, right?
Yeah, well, I found finding, for me, people to be honest was the challenge for me, to be very honest. To, like, finding, like, someone like my dad be like, it's nice, and that doesn't help you at all, because it's like, I liked it. It's like, well, thanks, right? Thanks, but it doesn't help you. For me, until I got to Calgary, I didn't really find anybody that was like, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good, this is good. All right, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. Because you need it. Like, we all have those moments where you know, we need to hear we suck, because and it's not because that's the only way we get better. We don't get better. So everybody says it's yeah, Jag is very honest. That's the kind of why I like her. She's actually one of my beta readers. Perfect. Right? Because she's brutally honest, and you know, and she wants to like my stuff, but she'll crush me at the same time when I need to be crushed. It's actually a beautiful relationship.
Hey, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, no, you need it. Like, it's the honest truth is you really need it, because otherwise you're not going to understanding being open to being better. It requires the fact that you're going to put something out there, you're going to try something, and you're going to be completely off base. And I've learned I've learned this the hard way. Yeah. And thanks, Jag. Jag said I've improved so damn much, and I loved it. She's actually read kind of like not just my next book, but the book after my next book already. So it's kind of been fun to and also I've been doing lots of nonfiction freelancing this whole year too, which has definitely helped my training, and so is my drawing, ironically enough. But that's me. That's me. But for people like really getting started, I've learned that it's the hardest thing about this industry in terms of the rejection part, as an artist, not as the business, is some of your shit's going to stink. You're not going to be able to see it. And you
can't actually see it in your own writing. You know, I talked about the burden of knowledge. That's a Jennyism for Jag there.
Yeah.
But the burden of knowledge, you can't see it in your own writing, because you know what you meant to put there, and you've got that movie playing in your mind. You've got that book idea exploding in your brain, and you don't know how that's reacting until you put it out there. So you're talking about beta readers, and beta readers are amazing. Hang on to Jag if she's a good beta reader. If you guys have them and they can tell you, then it's amazing. If you're working with other writers that have the skill set to actually tell you how to fix things, great. But lots of times your beta readers aren't going to be that, right? So they might have a lot of suggestions, and you feel like there's all this conflicting advice. If you send it out to 5 people, you might get 5 different suggestions on how to change it. But the thing is to recognize who it's coming from. And if they're not skilled readers, you can still use them for beta readers, but ask them how they felt. Ask them what they liked. What was your favorite scene? What was your least favorite scene? All those things. Because it's up to you to fix it as the writer. You're the god of your own story. You get to change it however you like. You don't have to listen to their suggestions on how to fix it, but pay attention, because if 4 different people tell you to fix a scene 4 different ways, okay, that's fine. You don't have to listen to their suggestions, but notice that the scene doesn't work. They're trying really hard to give you suggestions, and they may not know what they're doing, and that's okay.
And being a beta reader, I've learned, like, some of my friends are cool with me eviscerating a manuscript, like even coming from like just like a point of kindness. Some aren't. You gotta be very you have to be like, again, it's the hardest part of the process from the art standpoint. Like, how do I make this tell the best story I can with what I'm trying to do here? And like I said, I'm nearly done one book, so when I get back to working on the other book, I'm wholesaling fixing whole chunks of it, because there are pieces of it that I think work wonderfully, and then there are other pieces of it where it's like, I can do this better, because and the other big thing is, I've simplified it from my end, like, what's the story I'm trying to tell, and when I figure out what that is, I can pitch it, but 2, because when I know what the story I'm trying to tell, it helps me narrow down what's actually important to show the audience, and what's more important, not like to tell the audience without actually them knowing, like the show and tell, right? Because a lot of people get confused with show and tell as
you want to talk about show don't tell? We could go all night.
We could, but I mean,
that's my favorite topic on the planet.
What I've learned is that whole concept is the whole key to storytelling. It's the details that matter. And Jags, some people do take her on a little bit badly. Yeah, you can be brutal. Again, you're doing it out of love, right? You're doing it out of love, Jag. You're doing it out of love. But no, it's one of those situations where this, again, it took me a long time to learn this. It's like, what's the story I'm trying to tell? And when I figure that out, then what details actually matter? And it simplifies your writing in some ways.
Absolutely. And then you can figure out, I mean, once you know what you want, like you're saying the story you want to tell, I call that the takeaway. What you want your readers to take away from the story, it does simplify it, because anything in your book that doesn't point to what you want your readers to understand goes. It's like, boom, it's gone. Hold it for another book or something else. Doesn't belong, doesn't fit. Which one of these doesn't belong? It really, really can simplify things. It's awesome. Yeah. And you touched on something else, though, Josh, too, and I love this. The fact that you crave that feedback now and you can take it, because it's really hard as a new writer. And I meet writers all the time that come for coaching or editing, and I have that conversation with them. Well, what's your experience been with editors? Because a lot of them will say, well, somebody told me in grade 3 that I can't write, and I've been terrified ever since. And it's real. Like, that feels so real to them. They do not want that criticism. So, you got to kind of couch it a little bit while being very honest. But once you learn to take the feedback, like if you learn to take the feedback, Josh, and crave that, and you trust the people that are giving you that feedback, it's almost like getting an answer key. Like, heck, I would love to write something and then to feed it to somebody, and for them to be like, hey, here's exactly what you need to do to make it even better. Like, that is awesome. So you should take your editor and your beta reader's feedback and be like, thank you.
Well, this is the thing. My very first experience with an editor was with Ben Bella Books, right? Ben Bella is a decently sized publisher, and they don't fuck around. This was back in my early 20s when I needed really heavy editing, because you don't, me writing now versus me writing then, I'm way better now than I was then. I still could tell a story. There was something there, but I needed a lot of work. I've never seen pages that read in my life, even now. Like, but you learn very quickly when you get to the professional level of this. No one's trying to hurt your feelings.
No, not at all.
No.
And a good editor will kind of triage some of that and be like, instead of marking it up through the whole thing, be like, hey, I noticed you always do this thing incorrectly, so I'm going to mark it up for the first 10 or 20 pages, and then you go fix it.
I'm going to go like at the time, I'm being just very honest with my own abilities. At that point, I really needed all that read because it's, again, one of those things you have to experience like when you're, especially when you cross that professional threshold. And I think this is the deep water, deep dive into the scene and go and it's, they are paying you to do a job. Like if you want to like if you want to cut all the crap out, it's like you are presenting something that they believe needs to be presented to an audience, and that audience and themselves have certain expectations of what is going to be delivered, right? That part is a very, it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, because it is going to hurt a little bit, because
it hurts. You can cry for a day and get upset, and then
I know, totally, no, it's totally, but the reality is what you realize, again, I realized this very early on, it's the fact of the matter is that this industry, when you're working for a publisher, or you're working for a client, or you're working for even yourself, you want to come back and keep doing this. And the only way you're going to come back and keep doing this and get paid for it, right, is you got to be willing to. Now, you can fight your editor a little bit. There are some things you should be. It's not.
Well, like I said, how you fix something. I mean, depends. If you're doing freelance and they're paying you to do a job, and they say do it this way, then do it that way.
Yeah. Then
but with your own writing,
but even then, there's even some leeway too, because a lot of good editors will also realize too. I have to be comfortable with what I say. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where it's just like, you got to be just pretty real about that, what that is. So if I come to a solution that's a little different than the editors, but it says the same thing, a lot of times the editor's like, yeah, screw it. And sometimes I'll look at our fix, a correction. I'll look at what I did. I'll look at what they did. And I will not for the life of me understand the difference, but they're paying me, so I don't care. Some things are like, I mean, there's a give and there's a take to that. But what an editor cares about, and a lot of editors in bigger publications, bigger clients, they care that that you can work with them, that you have the skill set to do the job, but more importantly, that you're more important than your skill set at the moment, because you can acquire those skills even if you're not ready at that time. It's the type of personality you are in that moment, right? Because here's the thing too, right? I got like one of my steady gigs that I got based out of Calgary, I got fired for, because at the time I just couldn't deliver. I still thanked them for the opportunity. I still was very, very cordial, polite, and they noticed, right? It wasn't like, it's not like, you're fired for now. It's more like, we'll come back to you at some point when we think you're a little bit better at this. So that's more articles, that's more publications, that's more. But at the end of the day, I'll get another opportunity, because I've shown, even though maybe at that moment I wasn't ready for this position, right? That's just seasoning, not attitude. Because attitude is the make or break.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right, Josh. I mean, there's those who are willing to accept the feedback and want to get stronger, and I've got all the time in the world for writers like that, all the time in the world to help. That's totally fine. And then there's writers that just keep coming back with the same stuff or want to fight about it. And it's like, okay, well, at the end of the day, your story is your story, and you can write the book that you want to write. Mm-hmm. But if you're coming to a book coach or to an editor to help you, get that story across in a better way, I'm not going to touch your story. Whatever that is that you want to say, that's your story. Right? That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying sell out and write something else, turn your thriller into a romance, or turn your mystery into a YA. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like, okay, well, let me understand, what story are you trying to tell? Mm-hmm. And let's get it on the page so that exactly that vision that you have is what your reader experiences. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And if the reader forgets at least what they're saying, they'll remember what you made them feel, which is ultimately what's the good thing. Jag says a good editor will do something, and if you don't notice it, they did their job right. Actually, I'd go one step farther, Jag. A good editor will actually take your suggestion and make it better than you could have possibly imagined, that you have to shut up. That actually happened with the Cloud Diver.
What is a good editor? That's a great question, because that's the reason that I actually started editing. When I first started this journey, Josh, and we first met, I was still working full time as a business executive and writing on the side. And I just started taking on more and more stuff until this became my job. And I looked around and went, wow, I'm a full-time writer. I guess I shouldn't be trying to also be an executive. So I had to quit one of my jobs, but not this one. But yeah, I mean, the big thing is there are good editors out there that will help you learn and help you see and make your writing better, like Jag just said, right? But there are also editors out there that phone it in and that don't explain, and that you look at it and say, well, I don't see the difference, right? And if they don't, the reason I started editing was because I worked with too many writers who were getting edits back and getting frustrated because they didn't understand, right? And so I'm like, oh, let me help you. Let me help you. Let me teach you. And it just kind of worked out that way. So
well, okay. So I'm going to show Jag's comment, and she says, "I'm an editor, and sometimes I feel like I'm not great at it." And I'm actually going to ask this: why don't you feel like you're great at it? So we can actually we'll talk about it, because I'm going to tell you what I think a good editor is. Yeah. I don't think necessarily a good editor is necessarily the most technical. Doesn't have to be the most technical person. But what an editor has to, the editor has to fill 2 or 3 different requirements. They have to click with you personally, because on a personal level,
they have to click with your story.
Well, yeah,
right?
but even to some degree, you personally, because I mean, at least on a professional level, because they have to, I think most editors have to kind of realize like who you are, and more importantly who you're not. Sometimes and I've seen this with some publishing houses, not all of them, but some of them, sometimes they're editing to their particular brand, and to a point they all do that, but there's a balancing act we have to do there. It's like, okay, we gotta be true to this brand, but at the same time, or true to this formula, but at the same time, that voice that author's bringing to it is very, very, very important. And a good editor has a good way to straddle that balance when they're in bigger companies. But more importantly, it's like I look at someone like, for example, like I look at Craig DeLuey, like what he writes now versus what he wrote when he was younger. His editing is so different, and what is being edited is such a different thing. The editor he has now has such a great relationship. Like you can tell they click as a tandem.
Yeah, Craig's
so much
amazing.
better.
His writing's phenomenal.
Well, yeah, no,
Craig, if you're watching.
Yeah, no, like I just like, but you can tell one of the big differences. Craig's a much better writer, and he's made himself better. Yes, but he's also with someone that's letting Craig be Craig, and that I think is one of the biggest differences. And again, a good editor will do that to a writer. They will give them.
And I think, but Josh, there's different levels of editing. I don't want to get into that because that's kind of a boring discussion. But there are different levels of editing. So sometimes technical is really important. If you're getting them to proofread or do a line edit. But yeah, definitely, you need to be able to click with. You need to have a posse that around you, whether it's beta readers, editors. I mean, this is all coming back to whether it's, you and me in our writing community and helping each other, you producing my podcast, like all those things, me being on your show when you don't have a guest tonight, all those things, that it's really important to note that there's a whole page of acknowledgments in people's books. People don't go off and write by themselves. That is not a thing. I mean, it's very difficult to do it well. So we're talking about a lot of these same themes where, you can't see it in your own writing, so you need a reader's perspective. Of course you do. It's a conversation. It's a dialogue. Your writing is a conversation and a contract between you and a reader. So you can't do it by yourself, right? And the same thing with an editor. That's just one more piece in the puzzle. If you have a great beta reader, if you've got a great editor, if you've got a great posse that will do stuff like work for you when you don't want to learn how to do your own podcast, then right, like stuff I don't want to do. I don't want to do that. But I go to people who know how to do that, and I say, "Hey, you want to work with me?"
I think that's the other thing too. Is I think the biggest. I think writing alone is truly the biggest illusion. I think great people find great people to work with. That's just how it goes, and being smart that way, because you can only go so far on your own. You can go far on your own, but there's a point where you're just like, I need help.
And the industry is changing too. So even if you knew everything, perfect information about everything to do with the industry, which nobody has that, by the way. Even if you did, you couldn't possibly keep up with all the trends and things without changing. So, and I mean, me, I know lots of writers. I love the community aspect of it, maybe too much. I spend too much time helping other people and not enough time on my own writing some days. But that's okay, because I like that part, and I know that people appreciate it. But yeah, there's this whole sharing aspect of it, and I would never have. I mean, in the 10 years that I've been in this industry, I've had hundreds of conversations with very successful writers. They have shared so much. If you ask the right questions, they are so willing to help. And so I love giving back, but also don't be afraid to ask. I mean, don't be a pest, but if you have the opportunity to ask people, today we're here on the show. If you guys are watching the show, ask us. Ask questions.
So I actually going to come up with some comments here. First off, Jag disagreed with you about the editing being boring to talk about. Right?
Oh, yeah, well.
Yeah, she disagrees with you. I completely there.
Okay,
we
are
joined by the mysterious, all amazing Lord Dex. How you doing, Lord Dex? Welcome to the show. Right? And I hope you stick around. Yeah, this is Suzy Vadori. She coaches. She writes great books too. I'm actually going to ask before we fully go down the coaching journey, because your last book of your series was what you've done on your own. How was that experience for you?
Okay. Well, I didn't do it on my own. Of course I didn't do it on my own. Are you crazy?
No. What I mean
because
is
I self-published it.
Yeah, because you finally made that jump.
Well, but when I say that, so I don't do anything by myself. I'm an extrovert. I like the community. But no, so what ended up happening with that series was I was with a small Canadian publisher, and they're amazing. They were exactly the right publisher for that series at that time. But during the pandemic, they weren't able to put that third book out in time, and they didn't want to wait, and they understood that. They know me. They're like, I know you're not going to wait, but we can't do it this year. Everything's kind of in flux, and so it was awesome. But they actually did a lot of stuff still. They still put it together. They did the layout. They did everything. They helped with everything. So just so you know, so I did put it out under my own label, but they absolutely helped. I also worked with Mark Leslie, because he is amazing. And like I said, when I don't want to learn how to do something, then I call people who know how to do it and then work with them. So I worked with Mark. And so if you guys are in the self-publish gig, Mark Leslie is formerly of Kobo and now with Draft to Digital, and he is amazing. Good friend of mine and Josh as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I didn't do it really by myself. It wasn't really that different, is all I'm saying for my experience. But I didn't really do any of the self part of the publishing. So just full disclosure there. But yeah, that was the third book of the series. It's hard. So for those of you guys who are new to the industry, I
was gonna say Secret Confession.
What? Yeah, there. You heard it here.
Joke, that's okay.
I didn't really do it any differently than I did before. I used the same, I used the publisher's cover designer, same designer, same editors, same everything. So they were awesome. It takes a village, guys. And when they, I have nothing but good things to say about my publisher. And, they were lovely when it wasn't going to work for them to put it out this year, then that was fine. I just did it anyway, and they were awesome.
Evil Alter Ego Press, which who they are very underrated, actually, in my humble opinion. They are incredibly underrated.
Evil Alter Ego Press was exactly the right press for that series. Exactly the right press. And and it's too late to promote it, but this series right here of books, the Fountain series here. Can I do this?
Go ahead.
No. So the series of books, the Fountain series, actually has had a hat trick of nominations for an Aurora Award. I don't know when it's coming out, but the voting is closed. So we may have won, third time's the charm, but it's been a finalist 3 times. 3 books, 3 times the top 5 books in Canada, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, thrilled, over the moon. I really hope one of these times I actually win. But being nominated is amazing. And I'm here with Joshua Pantaloresco, who is an Aurora Award winner.
Yeah. And I also might be an Elgin Award winner this year. So
my goodness. I didn't know that.
Alice Zero got nominated for the Elgin Award. So when I for the first time in a long time, I wasn't nominated for an award for the Auroras. I was okay with that because it's like
Well, this year was strange, right?
Well, yeah, this year is very strange
because the conferences were lumped in. Everything was canceled, and so all of those sort of everything was lumped into one category. So
but again, same thing. I've already won, so for me, it's kind of like it's cool. But I mean, I'm glad someone else is getting the chance. I always kind of want to I always kind of want to get in for my writing, right? Just because I haven't done it yet, right? So a little later on, like right before when the nominations, like, oh, you didn't win, I literally get an email from the Science Fiction and Fantasy Poets Association. Hey, congratulations for nominating your chapbook Alice Zero for the Elgin Award. So I'm like, so
amazing.
I'm good, right? So first off, Jag had a bunch of comments. We're just going to catch up. And so did Anita Stewart. She joined the show.
Hello.
Yeah, hi Anita. Welcome to the show. So Jag goes, yay, another extrovert. Extrovert. Jag can spell. Apparently she can spell.
We might be the only two in North America.
Possibly.
We're very few and far between.
I'd have to introduce you. I hope today is not spelling. Okay, fair enough, Jag. But no, I look at. Hold on a second here. Lord Deck says, started writing last year as a self-challenge before the school year. Started to help me get into the writing mindset. I found I cannot spiel, but I really spiel. Okay, but I really enjoyed it. And that's what he basically said, Lord Dex.
Spelling's overrated. My children don't know how to spell, and we complained to their teachers, and they said that they don't teach spelling anymore because spell check does it.
Yeah, spell check does it. Or
I still really appreciate spelling, and I love homonyms and confusables. That is my superpower as an editor. It is my superpower to find all of your confusable words that are misused or misspelled. There are so many of them. Someday I'm going to make my own list because it's way bigger than any other list that I've ever seen on the interweb.
And that should be a YouTube video when you go next season. Is just like a fun little thing. No, I'm not. I'm serious.
And you know what? I actually have clients. So I'll just say this little aside. I have clients who, when I said before that, if somebody is coming back with the same mistakes, that's when I don't mind, because I work with writers who are dyslexic or who just don't see it. And I'll fix those every day for them because I don't judge. And your spell check will never find those. It will never find them. I've also lived and worked in both Canada and the US. So I love working with writers who are trying to write either in UK English or Canadian English and US English, because there are so many things. See, Jag, now I can geek out on the editing side with you. But yeah, so I can geek out about spelling all day long, but you don't need to know how to spell to be a writer. Your editor should know how to spell. But you don't need
your editor should spell, and Jag's loving you. She says you're literally the best right now. She's loving everything you're saying. That's right. See, yeah. So Jag, Suzy, Jag. I've made Jag dress. I've made Jag dress fine and meet some interesting people throughout her time on my show, coming to my show and watching. So
amazing. Well, I can't believe I haven't met you before.
Yeah.
But yeah, and welcome to everybody. But yeah, you don't need to know how to spell. Just hire a strong editor. So if there's something that you're not strong on, like podcast producing or self-publishing, then you can go and work with people who are really great at it, and just focus on your writing.
Yeah.
That's my plan.
Jag's real name is Suzy as well. So I think.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Did you ever go by Suzy though? Because Suzy is one of those names. Yeah. Anyways, that's a whole other story. I'm a Suzanne.
Yes.
But I've tried over the years. I worked in banks on Wall Street, and I tried to go by Suzanne because people didn't like calling me Suzy. I meet some older gentlemen at a boardroom table wearing my suit. They're wearing their ties and all this stuff before business casual really took hold. And I would introduce myself as Suzy, and they would call me Susan because they didn't think that Suzy was quite like mature enough or something. So, but then that bugged me because Susan is not my name; it's Suzanne. So then I tried going by Suzanne for a while, but it didn't stick. As soon as people heard me call Suzy, that was it. I was gone.
No, that doesn't sound like for me. Professionally, everybody calls me Josh. Almost everybody except for my grandmother. My grandmother calls me Joshua. But for the most part, but for everybody else, I'm Josh. Except professionally, this was just drilled into me when I was a kid. Whenever you sign your name on something, use your full name. And so that's that. I mean, there's the story for you right there. It's like use your full name. Hence, Joshua Pentolaresco is there, but almost everybody calls me Josh, and I'm really, really cool with
that.
So
even my Visa card, don't use my Visa card, but even my Visa card says Suzy on it because I worked in university. I worked as a teller at a bank, and even they couldn't call me Suzanne, so they just changed everything. So I don't think,
You're always meant to be Suzy.
Yeah, it's just everybody's decided for me. So names are funny, right? So what about naming characters?
I'll tell you a little secret of how I name all my characters. There's always something about their mythology of the characters that's always in their name somewhere, somehow, some way. Like, so Alice in Wonderland, Alice, her full name is Alice Pandora, right? So because it's the perfect like mashup, right? Especially for the story I'm telling. Even my other story, like in my Collar, Johnny Wheeler, like chance puts him in this weird situation. So the name in themselves kind of gives away a little bit about that character without actually, again, it's what you show and what you tell. And I think, and there's always that opportunity. Novel coming up, because she's such a monstrous character, she only has one name, and that's Corey, right? Because
what is it, Corey?
Yeah. The reason being, so it comes from two spots, right? For me, the most horrifying things, like my grandfather, literally was in the Hitler Youth in Nazi Germany, and one of the most horrifying things about that whole time wasn't as bad as those evil things were. It was the fact that it was ordinary people doing it. And it stuck with me. It's like anybody can, given the right circumstances, can do terrible things. And once you kind of go into those terrible things, it's almost like a slippery slope. And that's a big part of the characters. So giving an ordinary name there conveys a very, very, even without, again, it's one of those things I think about. It's my idiosyncrasies when I tell stories, right? It's when you give a character a name, you're also giving a sense of who they are as people. And if they don't have a full name, it's because usually they're not fully fleshed out people, but they have just an ordinary name, right? What I find is, what I'm saying is this monster is a person just like you and me, and I think that's a far more chilling truth than I think, and than a lot of people want to acknowledge. And that's just something these are things I think about when I tell.
No, it's great. I think about names too. I mean, I had 3 children and we agonized over their names. But now that I'm a writer, I get to name hundreds of people all the time. And sometimes I let my children name characters.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll be like, hey, I need a name. It's got to be like, and then it's got to be for this kind of person. Then they throw stuff out and sometimes I use them. I actually have a series that I'm working on, a revise and resubmit for a publisher. So fingers crossed on that one. We got to get that done. But in it, there are chosen magic keepers. And so they're keepers of this magic that's in the world. And every single one of the magic keepers, so they're like cloistered. So it's kind of like anyways, it's not to get too deep into it, but every one of the magic keepers that was named at birth has a name that means gift of some sort. And so that was a lot of fun, but as I kept going, I was like, this is awesome, but I'm running out of names. And I had to get creative. So in some language, way, shape, or form, their names all mean gift. So that was just like a little Easter egg. I don't think anybody will ever notice that. I spent so much time doing that.
Sometimes you just do things to amuse yourself. So first off, Lord Dexter, he's been going with very common Western names. I've been leaning towards using people's job titles or classes, no character as a last name. And he named a wolf Kevin.
I like it.
Yeah. So I mean, I named a villain after Adam Dries because it was amusing as hell.
That is awesome.
Yes.
For Adam.
Because Adam Dries, like the reason I actually had Adam as a villain, 2 parts. So when he did his picture, when he used to do cons, he wore this like steampunk regalia, and he had like this beard. I'm like, he almost looks like an evil wizard, and I just dismissed it right there, right.
Have you seen him didn't cut his hair during COVID? He now looks more evil.
I know, and now he looks more like an evil wizard. I know, it's
I love
hilarious.
awesome.
But the other part of it is then he did like a little tweet on his Twitter about Mr. Bigglesworth, and I was like, okay, you are a villain. You really are a super. So I asked him, right? So because I think one of the other things too about creativity that's really fun is sometimes you do things not because you're trying to tell a better story, but sometimes you're just doing things because you amuse yourself. And that's
Robert J. Sawyer. Love Rob. He puts other writers in his books all the time. Randy McCarles is in Quantum Night, I think. I was reading him. I'm like, Randy, what are you doing in this book? It's awesome.
I do the same thing. Like I literally, so in the Cloud Diver, my unicorn parts out an advertisement for Owl's Nest books. Like literally, like that's just
local bookstore in Calgary. Go support them.
Yes.
Love you guys.
I'm gonna be curious because I think I'm heading back there. I'm heading back there in like a couple weeks.
I heard that. I don't want to ask you about it on the air, but I do want to know if you want to share. Otherwise, I'll ask you about it later.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, Mr. Sawyer is a great author. He's one of the all-time greats, and and honestly, it's really cool. If it wasn't for Rob, I never would have done this podcast, and that is a true story. So, but
Rob is amazing.
No,
he's actually out here at a retreat this weekend.
I'm not surprised.
And I couldn't go because I was running my own virtual retreat, and I was like, wow, you guys are having like real retreat, but.
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah. So, Jag, to answer you, I'll just tell the story really quick. I had the opportunity. So, I've been interviewing people for 20 years, and I got the opportunity to interview Rob Sawyer, and Rob was really cool. He's a great interview, and it's actually one of the few new. It's episode 20 in my podcast. This was way like he was the first interview technically for it. I'll tell you how that came about in a second, but. Yeah, like you can hear how nervous I was interviewing Rob because it's my first time. It was my first time interviewing him. We were in this conference room at When Words Collide, my first When Words Collide, and when I come out, and I forget who I think it's Arlene Marks, but I could be wrong on this. I asked him what he was doing with me, and he goes, "Oh, I was interviewing Josh for his podcast. I didn't have a podcast at that point in time. I just had a phone that I could finally was recording."
I remember I was on it.
Yeah. I was recording people on it, and it's like just something clicked, and well, I'm at episode 637 here, so it's something really clicked.
637, that's a good number. I feel like it's lucky. Yeah, Rob recorded a cameo. It's inside my boot camp. I got a whole bunch of authors to do that because I think it's really important for up and coming writers to understand how other people are doing things because I'm fascinated. My business background, fascinated with how people make a job out of writing, which I did by accident. But how people make a job out of writing, and everybody's doing it differently. And so I asked writers to participate, and he did. So there's a video from Rob inside my boot camp.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah. No, yeah. Rob, honestly, Jag, Rob is one of the most generous guys in the industry. He's got his quirks, I will say that, but I mean, but for all of that, one of the most generous, sincere dudes you'll find in
super helpful.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Yeah. And that's who and that's like who, and Josh, like you're like that too, just so you know. I mean, you help lots of people
all the time,
right? Like there's great examples in this writing industry of writers who are open and willing to help and not competitive. I mean, if you do well and you create a reader, guess what that reader's going to do? They're going to turn around and read another book. So good job.
Yeah.
Please, everybody go write your books. You're not in competition with me. It's not going to be anything like my book. And even if it is, then maybe if you create a reader, then they'll turn around and read my book. So we are in the business of turning, I'm imagining turning humans into zombies, but turning non-readers into readers. So if you can go do that for me, you writers out there, if you go write an awesome book, that helps me too. Floats all boats, right? So
it's all about it. It's totally all about this. The biggest thing you bring to this, ladies and gentlemen, is yourself, and you have to remember that.
Yeah, we could all take the exact same outline, right? All of us on this call, everybody watching, I could give you guys all an outline. We go away and write a story, be completely different. In fact, there wouldn't be a sentence. Likely, there wouldn't be a sentence. Maybe hello or no or something with one word, but there wouldn't be a sentence the same. And that's because everybody comes with their own experiences. And that's what we talked about earlier, is putting, what story are you going to tell, and putting yourself on the page. And no editor can take that away from you or change that. That's you and that's your voice. But yeah.
So Lord Dex has a question. May I ask? I'll answer it too. May I ask how you feel about the lit RPG trend?
The what?
The lit RPG trend.
The lit RPG trend.
So
I don't even know what that is.
So I'm going to assume, Dex, are you talking about like for example, people putting together like campaigns and games like D&D and other things like that, and turning them into actual stories for like podcasts and novels?
Okay, that I can comment on. That makes more sense.
Yeah. I'm making sure that's what it is before I make this a formal question.
Yeah,
Dex,
perfect.
can you just verify that yes or no? Because
I think it's great. I think you have to be really careful, because when you come from the gaming world, there's a lot of times when you are building a manual, right? Like your world building is literally a list of rules. And so.
Oh, okay. So just real quick, novels that are set in games worlds and use game terms in their story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say, we were talking about show don't tell.
Yeah.
Taking it and having your reader be immersed in that world versus listing everything out really is way more, because I do work with a lot of fantasy writers that come from that. They start out writing lists of rules for their worlds and games. And basically the biggest thing that you have to do, I think it's amazing, I think it's great, bring readers from everywhere, bring readers from gaming, bring readers from everywhere, make them all into readers. But definitely you need to be changing that style of sort of feeding you all the rules in a world to something where the reader can be immersed in experiencing it along the way, which is showing techniques, right? So.
Yeah, so a true story, Lord Dex. One of my favorite gaming novel series is from Magic the Gathering. I was a big fan of a Magic card called Toshiro Umezawa, and the reason why I was such a fan of that card was because of the trilogy they wrote about him in Magic the Gathering, because they fleshed him out as this really interesting character. So this will just say absolutely nothing to Suzy at all, but I built a commander deck based off of that card, based off the fact that I really, really dug that novel series. So that's that. I mean, I think.
But that's cool, because it meant something to you.
Yeah, no, right? I think. Well, the thing about games, this is like the crossover with Twitch, is it can be sometimes the next level of storytelling, because I think the thing that books can take from games is interactivity. Interaction is the true language of how a game is work. It's how you play a game is how the experience of the game and in turn the story can be conveyed. And I think games do a wonderful job of mixing story and action together in a way that books even can't do, which is, I think, is it's a very cool experience. I can see why games are such a big part of like I said, I'm on Twitch. This is a gaming community primarily. Yeah. And one of the cool things that they all love good stories. It's just what they do to tell those stories is very, very different. You know what I mean?
So clearly I'm not a gamer, but but there's a reason for it, and it's a weird reason. Because I think I would be somebody who would love it and who would lose whole days doing it. So it's a little dangerous, but also I get motion sick. So as soon as they started coming out with, the dooms and things where you're walking through a room, I can't play them.
Interesting.
So it's actually good. I think it saved me from a lifetime of, I don't think I would have ever become a writer if I could game.
Well, maybe not. Yeah. It depends. There are some games that have incredible stories to them. Honestly, I do think writers, like writing and gaming, are a lot more into. I think
especially fantasy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of writers that come from that community.
Yeah. I just think that I do think that, like, as a future trend, regardless of what genre you're in, there are things about interaction gaming can teach writing, and I can definitely see those parallels that are that I think are very important. I think that even if you don't play a game, understanding game theory, I think would actually,
Absolutely.
yeah, it would absolutely, I think is a very important piece of, I think, writing. I think I'm not going to say necessity yet, but it definitely doesn't hurt. It definitely doesn't hurt. So
It doesn't hurt, and like I said, I'm all for it because there is a whole generation that doesn't read because they spend so much time on their computers. My own kids included. We try and limit it. I've got 2 teens and a tween in my house right now. We try and limit it, but the pandemic was hard because they couldn't be with their friends, but they could virtually online. They were together. It happens in my house every day. But yeah, if we can. I love that crossover because you're bringing people from that community into reading and introducing them to that. So it's awesome.
Exactly. So, Miss Suzy, we'll get to fun off the air stuff when we're done here. But I think we have an interview here. What do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we are good.
So before I wrap up, is there anybody there who would like to ask Suzy a question before we call it a day?
Ask me a question. And if you come to my live masterclass on Thursday, you can ask me questions there too.
Yes.
I did a live this morning with my retreat, Josh, and it went like an hour and 20 minutes, and it was just like bam, bam, bam. They had so many questions. I answered stuff about publishing. I answered stuff about writing. I answered stuff about, I don't know what, workspace, work habits, whatever. I'll answer it.
Yeah. No, it's going to be, no, I can't wait. I'm hoping I can sneak in myself this week. We'll see how it all kind of plays out. All right, we're going to give it another minute. Do you have anything else coming up besides your masterclass at this point that you can talk about?
Well, the masterclass and then the boot camp. So come to the masterclass and find out about the boot camp. It's a lot. It's an 8-week program. You're coming and joining us, Josh. So for the boot camp, which I can't wait, it's going to be so much fun. There's just so many stories. Like I did it first. The first cohort of the boot camp was in the spring, and some of the writers there are getting deals now on books that they wrote during the boot camp. And I get calls every day about what's happening for those writers, and I'm so proud of them. I just can't even. So I just love meeting new writers, helping them along their way, and making people's dreams happen. So I'm excited that publishing is sort of loosening up a little bit after the pandemic. It was a pretty tight couple of years. So yeah.
So Lord Dex has a question for you. What is the most common writer mistake you find, and how do you fix that mistake?
Well, most common. So I've done lots of presentations on this actually, and there's different things. There's editing mistakes, the most common editing mistakes, and some small things that you can fix. And then but the most common mistake, I got asked this actually this morning. The most common mistake, if you want to be traditionally published, that's what the masterclass is actually about on Thursday night, is that common mistake, which is not paying attention to the actual reader expectations in your genre. So if you are writing and you just want to write for yourself and you write something that doesn't match the length and doesn't match the POV and doesn't match anything, that's great, but it has to be so much better to get anybody's attention that you're really doing yourself a disservice. You're making things way harder for yourself than you need to. So paying attention to the genre expectations when you can, break the rules by all means. If there's no other way to tell your story and it makes sense, break the rules, but don't break all of them. So the biggest mistake that I see when people come to me, they're experiencing rejections or they want feedback on their manuscript and they're trying to get it out there, is, that they wrote it without doing their research on what readers expect, and then they don't have a market. Mm-hmm. So again, not saying you need to change your story. Don't change your story, but because it's your story. But the way that you write it, if you can write it to incorporate some of those and just break a few or tweak a few, instead of breaking every single rule, and then people are like, I don't know what to do with this book, so they don't, right? Yeah, that's the biggest mistake. Mm-hmm. It's really a big pain in the butt to change POV or something later. I've done it. Was it fun?
No, it's not fun at all. I've done it myself. All right. Is there any other questions, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to the round of plugs and stuff? Going once. going twice. I think we're good. So I'm going to put this. Yep, I'm good. Yep, Jackson, you're good. So this is what I'm going to do right here. I'm putting up the link once again to her masterclass. So we're going to do that right now. That's what we're going to be plugging. How can people find you if they want to find you?
They can find me at suzyvadori.com.
All right.
Hop on I have an Inspired Writing weekly newsletter. I have my vlog that Josh produces. And it is writing tips every week during the season. So I do little short videos. They're super fun. They only take a few minutes. I give you guys lots and lots of writing resources. So if you want to follow me, you will eventually learn everything I know.
Yeah.
Until I run out of things to talk about.
Yeah, which is more than what I know. All right, folks, that'll do it for this episode of Just Joshing Wednesday. Violet Mayer joins the show. She was going to be my original guest Monday, but it's going to be Wednesday for her. Friday, I'm doing a drink and draw with Shani O. I think I'm going to be trying something a little different when I draw this week. It's going to be kind of fun. So also of note, this month's sponsor is Jennifer Lieberman's Year of the What. She's got her audiobook there. When you guys listen to this, click on the link below. You can enter for win her book on a copy of audiobook, so definitely can do that. Beyond all that, you can follow me on Twitch. Hit the follow button on my Twitch, twitch.tv/justjoshingpodcast. My YouTube channel is Joshua Pentellaresco. Hit the like, subscribe, and enable notifications there. Alice Zero is nominated for the Elgin Award. Alice 1 comes out November 1st. At least that's the plan. We'll kind of see how it all plays out in the next few weeks. Stay inspired. Keep inspiring dark and keep making beautiful things. And I'll see you guys Wednesday.